So welcome everybody, and welcome Andrew.
Thank you, Tom.
And we're going to start our chat in a few minutes, but before we do, we're going to have a little show reel here, some of the works that Element Pictures have done over the last many years.
Do you remember how Alice wasn't always in Wonderland?
Television.
I thought we could all watch a movie together.
I'd like to watch a movie.
Maybe this time it could be different. Someone out there out in the distance.
I can do good now. I like you.
Look at me! How dare you! Close your eyes! Hide!
You're free.
I'm Frank. We'll all be together.
I forgive you.
So fun eyes and take a picture. Friends all start.
I didn't mean for you to say that. Get out of my house! Someone needs to punch you in the face.
Only having a bit of fun, like.
Show you everything I'm missing. I was there, but I was dreaming.
It's really fucking good.
Maybe this time it could be different. There's someone out there out in the distance.
So Andrew, it's an incredible track record. And I think I'm right in saying that since you first won an Oscar, you've had 26 nominations, 6 Oscars, and during that time, Martin Scorsese has a big fat 0. Is that right?
That's possibly technically true, Tom. Not sure we'd make that correlation. Yeah.
But may I ask, before we get into that, when you left Belvedere in 1986, were you voted most likely to succeed, Andrew?
Thank you. Thankfully, I have a few OB86s in the corner over there to keep me on the straight and narrow. I suspect I definitely wasn't. I mean, I it's funny. I was delighted to accept the invitation, and thank you to everyone here for having me today. I'm always slightly conflicted when it comes to Belvedere because I feel slightly a fraud because most people who went to Belvedere went from the age of 4 and were formed by the Jesuits and steeped in the ethos. I arrived to Great Denmark Street aged 16 and I was probably largely formed at that stage, and all my bad habits had been established at that point. So the Jesuits did their very best to try and instill some sort of discipline and academic excellence into me. But no, I would say I was definitely, I belonged in the messer category, if you like. I was in the B stream in 4th year, and schoolwork wasn't something that came naturally to me. But I had lots of other things that kept me busy, but yeah.
And that time in your life, 83 to 86, I think I'm right in saying that your parents sent you to Belvedere for a bit of stability because there were some other things going on. But what was that time in your life like when you look back on it now?
I mean, it's great. I mean, I started life off in St. Killian's, the German school. I grew up in Bagger Street, went to school in Clonskeagh. From a very young age, I used to cycle out to Clonskeagh every day. I loved the freedom of that school. It was quite artistic. I had no discipline whatsoever. So it was great for self-starters, but for someone like me, it was a disaster, to be honest. So, but in 1983, there was a mass exodus out of the school, and 5 or 6 families that had been there from the start all left, including the Lowes. And my parents' first port of call was Gonzaga, and my younger brother, John Barry, who was 1990, I think 91, he left Belvedere. Gonzaga were delighted to take him, but when they saw my school reports, refused to take me. So my father went over to meet Bruce Bradley, who very kindly, and I'd be always grateful to him for it, agreed to take me on as a project. And poor old John Barry, all of whose friends were in Gonzaga, found himself in Great Denmark Street for the next 6 years, but he did very well out of it. So yeah, it was a real culture shock coming to Belvedere. I had been in a non-denominational mixed school, very lax, as I say. We used to hop over the wall into UCD every day, hang around Students' Union in UCD. And I'll always remember arriving in Great Denmark Street. The first time anyone ever called me Lowe was age 16 in the yard. I was wearing a uniform, it was all male, it was 1,000 kids in the confined space. But I actually loved it. And it was, there was great energy. I made some great friends in Belvedere. And it kind of, because I lived in town and our house became a place to hang out in for my gang in Belvedere. But so it was actually great, and I'm eternally grateful to Belvedere for helping me scrape into Trinity in 1986, because there's no way I would have made it had I stayed in St. Killian's.
And your wife Kiva is here with us today. Am I right in thinking your father-in-law was a Belvedere boy?
Oh my God, yeah. So John Donnelly was my father-in-law, and some of you may know him in the professional story. He was a managing partner in Deloitte for many years and a receiver, and quite a formidable character. And I think it's probably fair to say he didn't first take to me when he first met me. I was kind of an artsy guy, and this was his, darling daughter. But he was a passionate old Belvederian, and when he discovered I went to Belvedere, that was it. I was on a pedestal. I could do anything I wanted. So.
And apart from Kiva, the other person you've got into bed with in your life, so to speak, is Ed Guiney. How did another Jesuit boy from Gonzaga, your partner in crime in Element Pictures, how did that come about?
It sort of goes back to, I knew Ed as a teenager hanging around Dublin. A cousin of mine was in school with him in Gonzaga, and we sort of spent a summer hanging out together. He's never retired, pointing out 2 years older than me, but it was that kind of, I was 15, they were 17, hanging around. And we then went our separate ways, and Ed went through Trinity and very quickly established himself as a film producer and set up a small company and produced a bunch of first-time feature directors. I went to Trinity, did Spanish and German, and it sort of took me the 4 years in Trinity to figure out actually film is something I'd like to do. But I took a circuitous route. I decided I would train as a chartered accountant first. So I trained at Coopers and Lybrand, but as soon as I qualified, I started working in film. And I spent a few years freelancing as a production accountant and worked with Ed on a film. And that was the start of a sort of 3-year conversation about how we might collaborate and work together. And he had the experience of a lot of this is the 90s, and the industry was just kicking off. And a lot of producers at the time, it was like a cottage industry. And really the conversation we had was, by pooling our experience and resources, could we try and build a company of scale? So that's what we set out to do, 2001.
So the 26 nominations were part of the plan from day one.
I wouldn't say that. But I mean, we kind of, one of the advantages you have, and I'm sure a lot of people have this experience in the room, being from Ireland, we just had to get on a plane and go find business elsewhere because it's just too small here. And that was something we were very diligent about, and we did a lot of travel and a lot of knocking on doors and working a lot with European partners, and then laterally in the US. And and that's just, so no, it was survival mode for about, I think, to be fair, about the first 10, 11 years of the company. It was like, keeping the machine fed. And then I think things started to, get a bit more established after that.
Can I ask you, for people who don't know, like from the outside in, that level of success and going to the Oscars and Cannes Film Festival, first of all, what's it like? And secondly, how do you stay grounded? Like your two boys are here today. How do you compartmentalize hanging around with Emma Stone one day and then being at home getting the boys to do their homework the next day?
Well, I'm very lucky to have married Kiva, who's very much kept me grounded, and we had 4 boys in 4.5 years, so that in itself is a grounding experience. So, and also, to be honest, I love what I do. I get to work with a lot of creative, talented people, but I've no illusions that I'm a particularly creative person myself, and I'm certainly not a front of camera person. So it suits me very well to be part of that world and then just close the door and go home and have my regular life, if you like. I mean, the Cannes thing is, I know it sounds glamorous, and to be fair, it actually is glamorous, but it's also a lot of work. I mean, it's kind of, it's the annual jamboree, and I think most people have an industry event, which is an annual gathering where you will find everyone, and it's what I love about Cannes. So it's a film festival, and it's a very important film festival. It's the premier film festival in the world, but alongside the film festival, there are 40,000 people attending a market. So it's just a huge jamboree. And it's a great way of meeting new people and reacquainting people you work with, and people from all around the world, Asia, the US, Latin America, Europe, they'll all gather there. And this year we're lucky enough to have 3 films in competition in Cannes, 1 in main competition and 2 in a certain regard, which is a sidebar. So that'll be the focus this year, is launching those films. But otherwise, it's really just about connecting with people, watching new movies, trying to spot new talent, yeah.
Well, look, you say you don't consider yourself a particularly creative person necessarily, but it's an incredibly successful business, and I'm not sure people understand how successful it is. But there must have been times when there were major risks that you took to get to where you are. Tell us about the lows in the business, because it's not all the highs.
Yeah, I mean, the definition of capital in the film industry is spending other people's money, and that's for good reason, because it is so risky, and it's a slightly cynical definition, but the truth is you normally use end users, i.e. broadcasters or distributors, studios, to finance your films, because they're the ones who benefit primarily from them. So we have to organize our business to make sure we are covering our overhead and managing that very carefully, but positioning ourselves, if something's successful, we get to participate in that. And occasionally that has been the case, but we have to be very front-footed and quite aggressive commercially to ensure that we protect our interests in that regard. But yeah, no, the early years were really tough. I mean, we just chased everything. And, the nice thing about a show reel like this is you get to see all the successes. There's a lot of turkeys we were involved in over the years, I can tell you. And, we learned. Ed and I have grown up in the business. I mean, the year we set up Element, I married Kiva, and so both relationships, thankfully, are still very healthy. But in the same way, when you look back at what you were like when you got married, you learn a lot as life goes on, and so the same in business. And we used to chase opportunity all the time, and then at a certain point, we realized actually we needed to nurture talent, and that was really what we were able to do, and we had a competitive advantage in a way in doing so. We just focused on talent we really believed in. Lenny was our first big investment in that sense, in terms of time. Lenny Abramson and Ed were very old friends for many years, and he was a very successful commercials director, but he always wanted to make a film, and eventually that was Adam and Paul. That was the first film, and thank you for remembering that earlier. It's a great film, and so we've produced all Lenny's films since Adam and Paul, and that includes then TV, like Normal People.
You mentioned to me at one point that Making Poor Things, which is the one that your most recent production that won several Oscars, that in a way doing productions like that is a bit like starting a tech company, running it for 12 months and then shutting it down again. I mean, tell people about the scale of making something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the analogy is more just like any startup, not necessarily tech, but probably, the idea is, we have, relatively speaking, quite a large production company. There's about 40 staff working between Dublin and London and Belfast. And a few of those key people will help us manage our productions. But when it comes to actually making a film like Poor Things, we have to ramp up a whole other army of people to actually make the film. And I always find it interesting that, you know, we, within a very short period of time, you pull together, you know, in terms of core production people, maybe about 150 people working on the production. Then you've, in the case of Poor Things, we had about 400 construction crew building sets for several months. This is all done in Budapest. Then you have the cast and you've got the extras. So it becomes literally a cast of thousands. And what I find remarkable is most of these people haven't actually worked together before. I mean, many of them have, and some overlap with some others on other projects. But everyone's been trained in a way they understand what's expected. It's quite military-like, you know, so in the way departments are organized, the way we communicate, the way a script is broken down, and they figure out the schedule, and the budget comes from that. So it's all quite regimental. But, you know, you pull together these people over a sort of 18-month period, and then poof, it's gone, and they're all gone. They've all scattered, and they've gone off to make another film somewhere else. But it works. Yeah.
And I know from the small experience that my family had last year, that the promotion of a film is a ferociously punishing project.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, it is, and it was a bit unusual this time because Poor Thing, so we've been lucky, we've had 4 films now that have sort of featured in the Oscars, but Poor Things is the first time. So we launched it in Venice September last year, and it was in the middle of the actors' strike. So unusually we'd no cast there. And for anyone who's seen the film, you know, Emma Stone's extraordinary in the film, and Mark Ruffalo, and it was really hard for them not to be there, but they weren't allowed because of the strike. So it fell on the heads of department, who are usually not really to the forefront, and ourselves as producers, to kind of do the dog and pony show and talk about the film. So it, you know, I think I had 6 or 7 LA trips in 6 months, and a few New York trips, and then a few other around Europe, and that's just me, and I wasn't doing the heaviest of lifting. I mean, and once the strike was finished, the cast were just, you know, on a plane the whole time, traveling at festivals, promoting the film. So it's a huge campaign, and it's run, in our case, Searchlight, who are owned by Disney, were distributing the film for us, and they have a whole team who are expert in you know, marketing, publicity. So they just run a really rigorous campaign to make sure no stone's left unturned. And the whole agenda is maximize exposure for the film and ensure that everyone who has a vote in either BAFTA or AMPAS, which is the Oscars, gets to see the film, ideally with a Q&A, so that they get to meet the filmmakers in person.
Okay. And our mutual friend Catherine Tiernan is doing a show, another project that I'm not even sure people are aware is happening here, the Wednesday Addams show for Netflix, and I think she told me there's 1,000 people on the crew. The industry, the film industry, do you think there's an understanding at government level, in business circles, of what a big industry it is in this country, and maybe how important it is to our goodwill and our reputation around the world?
I mean, I think, to be fair, there probably is. I mean, you know, certainly in government circles, you know, we've had to work very hard as an industry to advocate for ourselves, and it used to be very hard. Like, it used to be that Enterprise Ireland loved animation because you go into a room and there was 100 people with computers, and that looked like a proper business. But us having, you know, 250 people up with Sally Gap, that wasn't a proper business. But in actual fact, you know, the crucial thing is, for film and for TV drama, the real opportunity for Ireland Inc. is enabling Irish producers develop and retain the ownership in their own content. And there are 2 types of businesses here. Look, we've got the production service business, which is something like Netflix come to town with Wednesday, and it's brilliant for employment, because 1,000 people are employed for, you know, and paid very well. So that's great. And that's important for us because it's supporting the infrastructure of the industry. But ultimately, there's no long-term value left, you know, in the sense that Wednesday's gone, and, you know, whereas, say, when we do Normal People, or indeed films that we shoot elsewhere, the ownership in that film is here. It's based in Dublin. It's in O'Connell Street, and any profits that flow from that are paid to the Irish Exchequer as our corporation tax return. So that's the real opportunity, and there's lots of great examples in the last couple of years. John Carney had great success with Flora and some which sold really well at Sundance last year. And there's many examples now, and that's the holy grail. And I think, to be fair, the government gets that, and they have really invested a lot in developing the sector. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that now. I mean, I think Catherine included, all these young actors coming through who are just, last night we launched The Dry Season 2, which is a show we do for RTE. And it was just so great to see, Siobhan Cullen, who's in that show, she's in Bodnik, the Netflix show, and she's got another film coming out. And all of these people are just starting to pop. And in the next few years, she'll be a star in her own right. And I don't think we can underestimate the soft power that gives us. We see it in the industry abroad. People do ask us about also what's going on in Ireland, and I think the simple answer is a lot of steady investment from the state over the years has paid off.
Okay.
Yeah.
From a creative point of view, I've seen a lot of the films in the show, if not all of them, and one of the themes that strikes me, whether it's intentional or accidental, is that a lot of the work, the films and the TV, they're about outsiders trying to fit in. Maybe inspired by you coming to Belvedere when you were 16, maybe not. But is there a theme? Is there? Because I know you've got different directors and different kind of shows, but you haven't gone in for, Marvel, creator of the universe. It's not art house. It's gone beyond that. These are very popular shows you're doing.
I think. To mention earlier, Jonathan and Alec, two of my kids are here. I have 4 boys, and they, I think maybe Poor Things is the first time they've actually been quite pleased about something we've done. Up till now, they've been generally embarrassed and disappointed, like another weird film or another weird show. But and I think we are drawn to that. I mean, as I say, we're very talent focused. So ultimately, we follow the talent and we work, but we're also drawn to the talent that are interested in things we're interested in. And I suppose, we're not action people. We're not kind of Marvel movie type. There are lots of people who do that and do it very well that tend to be based in Los Angeles for good reason. But that's not really what we're interested in. And I suppose if there's any kind of common theme, I mean, the thing I love about the industry is, as I said earlier, we get to work with some really brilliant people. I mean, that's the thing you need to appreciate about particularly actors. I mean, writers and directors is almost a given, but really good actors are incredibly bright. I mean, they're just really clever people. They're well read. They've seen everything, and it makes sense because they just, the way they perform, they just have an emotional intelligence that's kind of off the scale. The thing I like about it is it's an opportunity. And also speaking as, we have 2 cinemas, the Lighthouse in Smithfield and Colossus over in Galway. And what I love about the theatrical experience and particularly theatrical experience is the opportunity for people to come into a room and really go on a journey and ultimately, hopefully empathize with those characters. And I think the point was made earlier in terms of Adam and Paul. We did a film with Paddy Brannock based on a Roddy Doyle's script called Rosie, which is a really affecting film. It's a beautiful, small film about a ordinary, decent family slipping into homelessness. And it's charting 48 hours of that experience. And you can't watch that film and not be empathetic. And it's not a political thing. It's not like, one side or the other of the housing debate, but you really understand it in a way that perhaps you don't otherwise when you hear a stat on the radio. And so I think that kind of empathy and so often it's the margins you find the interesting stories, the successful people in the middle of, that's not as interesting. It's the people who fall off the wagon, so to speak, are probably where the drama is.
Okay. And you said to me earlier when you were talking about your time in Belvedere and afterwards, and knowing people from other schools, that there's something in the way that we were taught. It's indefinable that people do seem to have a social conscience. And my favorite film of all of yours is Adam and Paul. It was quoted earlier on. I just think such a brilliant work, just about interesting character. I knew poor Tom Murphy, who died, who starred in the film. Brilliant guy. That film is based, a lot of it is based in Dublin 1, near Belvedere, and your offices are now on O'Connell Street in Belvedere. there's a bit of a full circle there. Would that be fair to say? Maybe unconscious, but
Yeah.
picking your office to be in O'Connell Street was an unusual move.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, we were up in leafy Dublin 4 on Mespel Road, and we just outgrew the building, and we wanted to be closer to the lighthouse, so we were looking in that general area. But when we found these offices, they're like smack in front of the GPO, 3 floors over retail, and the views were just stunning. I mean, the offices weren't great, but we said we can fix up the offices. But and we did it deliberately because for Ed and myself, we sort of took the view, well, you know, we're not going to do something else. We're going to, as long as we work, we'll run this company. We want to have nice offices. You go spend most of your working day there, and we have a young team, and they just love the energy of O'Connell Street, you know, and they're all on the Lewis, and you know so it's handy from that point of view. But you're right. I mean, I picked up. We've a boardroom, and we had an architect said, "Oh, you must buy lots of paintings," and you know. And of course, Ed and I get on very well, but we don't share the same taste when it comes to that sort of thing. So I just knew that's never going to work because he'll never like anything I buy and vice versa. But I spotted this little painting, small little painting of Madigan's on O'Connell Street, which is now long gone. But I remember walking to Belvedere every day. You'd pass. It was quite a modern pub. It was beside what would be the Savoy Cinema now, I guess. And so anyway, I have that hanging in the office, and I'm drawn to the area. I feel very comfortable there. I mean, as I grew up in Baggot Street, but I used to cycle over every day up to Great Denmark Street, and I have very fond memories of it. So it doesn't, yeah. I mean, I know for a lot of people, Dublin 1 can be a little intimidating. Maybe I don't feel that at all. I think it's very neglected, and it's really sad to see the city has been let go in the last few years, and I really think a lot has to be done to turn it around, but it can be and will be, I'm sure. So yeah, but it is a bit of a full circle moment.
Yeah. Well, look, fair play for doing that. And as one of the reasons we're here today is to support the Belvedere Youth Club, which is a brilliant charity based in that area. And your presence here today guaranteed a full house, Andrew. So thank you very much for that. Oh. And as you possibly know, Barry Keoghan was, you know, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that he was picked up off the streets in some ways into the Belvedere Youth Club, and they nurtured him. And there is something about art and film that it can change people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, going back to your question around Cannes, we've known Barry for years, but I believe I'm right in saying the first time we worked with him, certainly as a lead actor anyway, was a film we shot in Cincinnati in Ohio called The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It's a Yorgos Lanthimos film, and it stars Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman. And it was in competition in Cannes a couple of years ago, and there is nothing like the experience of going to Cannes with Nicole Kidman, and she is the ultimate glamour draw in Cannes, and like just the wall of lights as you walk up the red carpet and down the red carpet with her. But front and centre is Barry. There is Barry right with Nicole, and in between Colin and Nicole. And it's amazing to see his career and his trajectory. And he was a pleasure to work with, and we're very fond of him. We've a few other projects where we're trying to figure out to do with Barry. But I think his you know, he was at I don't know if anyone saw the Met Gala the other day. He's brilliant. He's just like living his best life, and it is incredible to think where he started from and where he's got to, and he really is a serious actor taken seriously, and it's great to see.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you for being here today, and thank you for staying connected with Belvedere. And
my pleasure.
Congratulations on everything you've done. Your Belvedere friends are all very proud of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.